Welcome back to our course on Project 2016. In this section we're going to look at milestones. And milestones are used to denote significant points or events in a project. Usually milestone tasks have zero duration, but Project 2016 does allow milestones with non-zero durations as well. Milestones are used for a number of different purposes, and amongst the most important ones are as a way of providing a management snapshot of progress on a project. So there is, for example, a particular report called a Milestone Report, where you can just view the key milestones in the project and get a summary of where you are in terms of those milestones, which in turn gives you a good idea of general progress on the project. They can also be used to show you what's coming up next, what's happening, say, over the next week or the next month or the next few days. And very often milestones are associated with a payment schedule of some sort. So, for example, when a particular point is reached in a project, there may be a payment to make. Now, what I'm going to do with the wedding project is to take some of the existing tasks and turn them into milestones, and I may well introduce one or two new milestones as I go through. Before I start, note what I've done with the project at this stage. This is version 3 of the project. I have collapsed all of the summary tasks. Note that when I do this, you can't see all of the dependencies. So, for instance, there is a dependency between a task in wedding day and the setting of the wedding date. But because wedding day is collapsed, you can't see that link. If I expand wedding day, that link is now visible. Note the link from book wedding venue, task 40, up to set wedding date. But when wedding day as a summary task is collapsed, you can no longer see that link. So this just emphasizes the point that when you're looking at a project with some summary task collapse, you need to be careful at what you're interpreting, because some elements of the project may have become invisible, even though they're actually quite significant. Now, one very important aspect of milestones is that, generally speaking, although I should say there are exceptions, but generally speaking, because a milestone is a task of zero duration, it is assumed that there is little or no work associated with the milestone itself. If I take task 4 here, set wedding date, if that doesn't actually involve any significant amount of work, I could make it into a milestone. But what I'm actually going to do on this occasion is to insert specifically a milestone which indicates when that task has been completed. So I'm going to select the task below it, which is basically a blank row, and then on the task tab in the insert group, I'm going to say insert task. Now that task I'm going to rename to wedding date set. So that's basically a statement that something has happened. It isn't something to do itself. And then in the duration for that task, I'm going to change it to 0 days, which will make it into a milestone. And the default notation, the default symbol in a Gantt chart for a milestone is a diamond. So now I'm going to select set wedding date and select wedding date set and link them in the usual way. And I have my first milestone in my project. Now, I'm also going to set milestones that indicate when the venues have been booked, the venue for the wedding and the venue for the reception. So let's start with the reception venue. So I want something to indicate that task 21 has been completed. I can do the same that I did just now, insert task, but there's also an option within the insert group on the task tab of insert milestone. So that automatically gives me a task of 0 duration. Let's change the name. Once again, put in the linkage. Do the same down here for the wedding venue. And then I've just got a very few other milestones to add. I'm going to add one to indicate that all of the attire has been ordered, one to indicate that the guest list has been finalised, and finally that the wedding is registered and licensed. And then I have just one more thing to do, and that is that I'm going to turn the wedding day itself into a milestone. But I don't want to reduce its duration to 0 days, because there will be things to do on the wedding day itself. So what I'm going to do is to double click on the wedding day, and I'm going to use on the Advanced tab this little checkbox in the bottom left hand corner, Mark Task as Milestone. Click on OK. The task is now marked as a milestone, but as you can see, its duration is a day, and there will be work for people to do on that day. Let's hope they don't think about it too much as work, but as far as Microsoft Project is concerned, it is work. So there we are, we have some milestones in our project. I'm going to take a look at those in just a moment. Before we do, I don't actually need the timeline at the moment, and the project is beginning to take up more and more space. So let's save a bit of space by hiding the timeline. Can you remember how to do that? You go to the View tab, and you can just switch off the timeline. So uncheck that checkbox in Split View. And we now have a little bit more space to see the project. If you only wanted to see the milestones, you can use one of the features of the View tab, which is to use a filter. And in the data group on the View tab, there is a filter control with a drop down there, and one of the options on the drop down is milestones. And if I select that, I will only see the project milestones. And that gives you some idea of how useful milestones can be in terms of setting out the key points in the project over the course of its duration. Now, one other point that's clear here is that we still have a lot of work to do on this project, because, for instance, we still haven't worked out when the wedding day is going to be. It's still right near the beginning of the project. Now, you might be a little bit frustrated by this and thinking, well, why don't we sort out the wedding date? Well, the reason that we don't is that we still have some very key factors to take into account before we can work out when the wedding date can be. And we're going to be moving on to those factors after we've done exercise 3. Once we've done those, we'll be in a better position to actually pin down a wedding day, and then we'll see again how useful these milestones can be in terms of giving us a realistic summary of the key points in the project. Now, if I've applied a filter, as I have here, I can unapply it by clicking on that drop down again and saying no filter. In this section, I'm going to set you exercise 3. And as exercises go, this is actually quite a long exercise. It will take you a little while to work your way through this one, and it has a few constituent parts. What we're going to do is to take the bathroom refit project, and not only are we going to add the durations of the various component tasks, but we're going to put in dependencies, and we are going to change the overall structure of the project for reasons that I'm going to explain first. Now, sometimes when you go through a project and have your first try at listing all of the tasks, and as we've done here, grouping them together in some way, you may be quite successful and make a thorough list of what's required in the project, but you won't necessarily structure it in a way that lends itself either to easy scheduling and planning or to easy understanding. And you can finish up in a situation, and this is what was happening in the wedding project, that you finish up with many complicated dependencies. So for instance, I have a summary task here, preparation, task 16, and one of its subtasks is prepare for painting. Now we know that further down in the plan we have a paint task, and clearly one predecessor of the paint task is going to have to be prepare for painting. But there will also be various tasks following on from painting that depend on it, such as actually fitting the equipment. Now, whilst a number of dependencies are obviously going to be the cornerstone of scheduling the project, you can greatly simplify the structure of the project once you've got your basic list of tasks by dividing the project into phases and making each phase as self-contained as possible. Now, what we're going to do with the bathroom refit project is to make 4 phases. We could do it in 3, but I'm going to make it into 4 phases. And from the point of view of dependencies, each of the 4 phases is going to be self-dependent. It's going to be independent of the others. Now, looking at what's involved in this bathroom refit, the 4 phases that I think we should divide the project into are basically a planning, a phase of activities that happen before we start doing the work, so the planning certainly, but also arranging the finance and appointing the contractors. All of that's going to happen. Those first 3 summary tasks are going to form one phase. The second phase is going to be a purchasing phase. There's quite a lot of selecting to do. I need to select paint, equipment, tiles and so on, and I need to order it and get it delivered. And I'm going to get all of that done before the work actually starts. Now, of course, you could have some of the materials arriving once work has started, but for the purposes of simplicity in planning this project, I'm going to get all of the purchasing done and all of the deliveries arranged before I actually start doing any work. The third phase will be the work itself, the implementation itself. We'll call that the implementation phase. And then the final phase will be one where any snags are dealt with and there's a sort of cleaning up phase, making sure that everything is ready to be used. Now, in order to give you the information you need to do this division into 4 phases, let's take a look at my answer to exercise 3. So there you see the 4 phases as collapsed summary tasks. Task 2 is the planning phase summary task. Its total duration is 12 days, and you see the columns of information. Clearly the values in the duration columns for the summary task will be derived from the durations of its subtasks, but the predecessors column shows you the predecessors of the summary task, and the successors column shows you the successors of the summary task. So if you take, for example, task ID 21, purchasing phase, its predecessor, the one it depends on, is task 2, which is the planning phase, and its successor, the one that comes after it, is task 40, which is the implementation phase. So you can see there the very simple structure of the overall project in those 4 phases. Now, if I open up one of the phases, I'll give you an overview now of the dependencies and how they work within the phase. Within the planning phase, there are 3 summary tasks, as before, although I have moved finance after contractors. And basically, with these 3 summary tasks, the individual durations are there, and lots of individual dependencies within the planning phase are there. So, for instance, scoping, task 4, has 5 successors, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. And these include selecting the style, deciding whether we're going to have a project manager or not, checking what permissions are required, if any, to do the work, fixing the dates for the work, and arranging temporary accommodation to use while the bathroom is out of action. And then we have the summary task contractors, where we get some contractor recommendations, make a short list, get some quotations, appoint the contractors. Note that the get contractor recommendations task runs in parallel with some early phases of planning, but we won't be getting contractor quotations until the planning summary task 3 is complete, because we want to be clear about exactly what we're expecting the contractor to do. Implicit in this arrangement is the fact that we don't believe that any choices we make about tiles and so on will significantly affect the contractor quotation. But that's another point to bear in mind. If the contractor says, well, depending on the type of floor you get or the type of tiles you get, you may increase or decrease the cost of the quotation, one would normally have to bear that in mind. So that's the contractor's summary task. Then we have the finance summary task. Once we've got our contractor quotations, we can set about arranging the finance. Now, in order to help you to get all of these numbers right, to get the durations in, get the dependencies right and so on, I've prepared a text file for each of the 4 phases, which is in the exercise folder, and it lists the durations and the dependencies, the predecessors and successors, in terms of the task IDs in my answer to exercise 3. If for some reason your IDs are differently numbered to mine, then clearly that will affect all of these predecessors and successor values, but hopefully your ID numbers are the same as mine, so you should be able to use this to help you not only to enter the appropriate durations but also to set up all of the correct dependencies. So you're looking now at the text file for the planning phase. There is a text file for each phase in the exercise folder. So here's the purchasing phase. You may be wondering throughout why you can't see start and finish dates here in my answer to exercise 3. Well, whenever you're working your way through exercise 3, it won't be on the same dates that I'm recording this. So to a large extent, the dates, if I gave you my dates, wouldn't really help you. The durations are important, the dependencies are important, but I'm assuming throughout that your dates will be different from mine. But I've got a little twist in the tail of that towards the end of this section on exercise 3. Okay, so that's the purchasing phase, pretty straightforward. It includes the delivery of each of the materials, tiles and so on. So at the end of this, I've introduced a milestone there, task 38, all materials on site, as a significant milestone in the project. Next we have the implementation phase. Let me explain the main points here. We set up a skip, a receptacle for the waste products, which arise from gutting the existing bathroom and from the building work that we're going to do in fitting the new bathroom. Then we have a lot of preparation to do, prepare for tiling, prepare for flooring, so there may be joist work to do, there may be plastering to do, etc. And we do the first fix electrics and the first fix plumbing. These are the electrics that go over the ceiling, behind the walls, under the floor. Similarly, the plumbing that you can't see, the waste pipes and so on. Then we do the painting, the flooring, the tiling, any other wall work that's needed, general building work there, such as 55, 57, 59. Then we start the second fix electrics. This is things like putting the sockets on the walls, and the second fix plumbing, which will be things like the pipes from the pipe work behind the walls, but this is the visible pipe work that connects up to the taps, the faucets. It's often the case nowadays that there is some kind of electrical certification needed once the electrical work is finished, so that's task 50 here. And then once the second fix is underway, fitting the equipment begins, task 61, and when the fitting of the equipment is finished, we have a milestone, task 62. The final phase, the completion phase, is simplicity itself. We have a task to resolve any outstanding snags. We clean up and we declare the refit complete. There is one last part to exercise 3, and the last part is to move the start date of the project to the first working day of the month following your current month. Clearly your dates will be different to my dates. I'm doing this in late December 2015, so I'm going to move the start of this project to January the 4th, 2016, which is the first working day for me in that year. When we looked at the project information dialogue earlier on in the course, you saw a way of changing a project start date. But once you've got a project set up and you have constraints and deadlines set up, The way that you would change the start date of a project so that the constraints and deadlines are moved in line with any change you're making is to use the Move Project option, which is in the Schedule group on the Project tab. You choose your new start date. In this case, I'm going to choose January 4th, 2016. Make sure that Move Deadlines is checked. That will move the deadlines and constraint dates. Click on OK, and my project is now moved to start on January 4th, 2016. So that's the last part of the exercise for you. That's the end of this section. I'll see you in the next one.
Hi, Anderson here. Thanks for watching. If you need additional Project 2016 training, get our free 3-hour course for beginners. Click the Get My Free Course button on the left. I'll see you next week with additional videos.